Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to those of you who were here with us this morning and to any new attendees this afternoon. A few things before I introduce the presenters for this afternoon's session. The questions from the last session will be followed up. There were a few that came on which I didn't respond to. It's good to remember that the final breakout session follows these presentations, and I urge everybody to join those. Questions can be tabled throughout this session through the presentations, and please do that. And if we don't have time for Q&A, because we've got 3 presenters this time, we will follow them up afterwards, but please leave your full name with the questions. The latest poll is now running, so please respond to that. And the question is, should access to asset data be restricted to just statutory undertakers and local authorities and their contractors, or open to anyone putting a spade in the ground? So now I'd like to introduce this session. The session is Understanding Strike Incidents, Who, Where, What and How. And surely if we can answer all those questions easily, we'll be in a much better place. So we've got 3 experts as far as that's concerned. We have Geoff Glover, who's the Pipeline Manager with SABIC UK Petrochemicals Limited and is Chair of the Linewatch Pipeline Safety Group. We have Phil Taylor, who manages one of the largest operations of liquid high pressure pipelines in the UK and is chairman of the UKOPA Infringement Group. And we have Sam Parton, who joined Fisher German in 2010 and since 2017 has been working as the contract manager on the CLH-PS contract. This is leading a team who deal with the Land Agency and Pipeline Protection Administration for about 2,000 kilometres of cross-country oil pipelines. I'm looking forward to hearing what these gentlemen have to say, and I'm sure it'll be a very stimulating session. Over to you, Geoff.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Linewatch presentation. I'll just take you through a few slides this afternoon. Get my computer to work, sorry. Okay, we'll start with a little bit of introduction about myself. So I've been working in the chemical industry for about 47 years now. Yeah, I know I don't look that old, but yeah, 47 years in the chemical industry. The last 25 years have been within the pipeline sector. My current role as pipeline manager is managing the safe operation and maintenance of SABIC's ethylene network in the UK. So we typically have buried assets that stretch between Teesside and Scotland, up in Grangemouth, across over into Cheshire, and some lines that go down into the Holt area. Currently, I'm the chair for the Linewatch group, and I'm also on the board of directors for UKOPA and take part in some of their working groups as well. That's enough about me. Right, a little bit of an introduction. Who are Linewatch, really? So yeah, this group was set up about 35 years ago, back in 1985, following an incident on one of the pipelines. And this is really about raising awareness of our networks and safe working procedures around our pipelines. Our members come from all different areas, really, from the oil and gas industry in the UK. And currently we have about 21 operators in the team. Okay, that just gives you a bit of an idea for some of the members we have in the group. And I'm sure there's some familiar names on there you'll all recognise, the likes of Esso, Shell, INEOS, National Grid, some fairly major operators. So what's so special about these pipelines? Well, they do transport all sorts of products, really. So we've got natural gas, a big network of that in the UK, as you know. Refined petroleum products. So we've got petrol and diesel, aviation, fuel and stuff going into airports and being transported around the country. We've got ethylene, which is the one that I'm interested in, which is for the production of plastics. You will have all heard of polyethylene, so that's where that comes from. The ethylene gas is turned into polymer chips and make into lots of things that are used worldwide, really. These pipelines do all run at high pressure. Some of them are major accident hazard pipelines, and some of the fuel lines and liquid lines come in the same sort of sphere of interest, really. Pressures up to 100 bar, 1500 psi in old money, and surprisingly, sometimes the nominal depth of cover of only 900 mil. Quite often people are surprised by the fact that some of these pipelines are relatively shallow within the ground. So a little bit about Linewatch Objectives, what our main objectives are. Really, it's about highlighting the existence of our networks in the UK, raising the awareness for people, making sure they work safely around our pipelines, really. We do produce standard guidelines that we could use to help people to plan and carry out their works around our lines. There's a special requirements booklet. Just to the right hand side of the screen now, you'll see a photograph of that document as such that we produce. One of the other things we'll do is part of our key work really is recording infringement. So all of the operators within the UK are currently recording into the Linewatch database. There's one of the good things of this is we can look at the trends, repeat offenders, and some of the high risk sectors. Now, I know Phil Taylor, who is on after me, is going to talk to you a little bit about some of those trends. So that'll be quite interesting as well. And ultimately, it's about trying to reduce pipeline infringements. You know, the last thing we want is somebody damaging our pipeline assets. And a pipeline infringement can be even recorded for a near miss, which somebody works within 50 meters of our pipelines. Okay. Safety awareness briefings. Yeah, these are a fantastic piece of work that we do from the Linewatch group. So these are free safety awareness presentations to the industry. These are anybody that's involved in planning works or working close to our pipelines. And Murray Pete, who works for Fisher German, is one of our guys that goes out and talks to the contractors. Typically, he does well over 100 presentations every year and ultimately around 1,000 plus contractors. Really good piece of work from Murray on this, really. These presentations are both reactive and proactive. So one of the advantages to the Linewatch members is if you've got an issue with a particular contract or you've just had an infringement, we can go out and tackle this straight up front, really. Again, Murray goes out and talks to people, engages with them in the sessions, and we've seen some good responses from that type of work. Those presentations also can be booked online, so you just go pop onto the Linewatch website and there's an availability there just to click on and put your company up for a reservation into that. Okay. E-learning modules. This is something relatively new. We've just developed in the last few months. Really quite excited by this because it's we've combined together with Linewatch and LSBud, which is Line Search Before You Dig, and we've produced these e-learning modules around safe digging. Now, great news is these are free and available to all. They're actually on the website. There's a link on that page there. You can get to it on the website by going down through, I think it's the news. It might be, yeah, it's on there anyway. So I've seen these. Yeah. So they're really well. Good, nice piece of work. This I really like this. What we've actually done within my company is we've now included this into our training needs analysis program. So guys there who work on pipelines are now looking at this as well, and it's the caption as a training need. One of the other things we're doing is we're sharing it with our contractors as well. So in our literature to go out, we send them the link and they follow it up. Recently, I've had some good responses back from Talent who've been putting their operators through this training regime. That works really quite well. Another thing we do is we produce pipeline safety animations. There's several of these available to have a look at, outlining some good practices for planning and undertaking works around pipelines. Again, these are available on the website. We've got some good ones, I think, on fencing and some good ones on drainage work. very informative, just gets the message over. Very short, just a couple of minutes, very easy to understand and follow. Some very good guidance from those. Agricultural engagement, this is another key objective really here. So we're typically attending agricultural shows throughout the year. This year has been a little bit different. A number of shows have been cancelled due to COVID. Typically we'll do a lot of the major shows. So we go to Lama in Birmingham in January, which we went there this year. We used to try and attend the Great Yorkshire Show, the Royal Highland Show, a number of sort of ploughing matches and various things throughout the year to try and spread the message really. One of the things we're doing is working closely with the Association of Fencing Industries, the National Association of Agricultural Contractors, and then the drainage contractors at a national level as well, raising awareness within their membership. This has proved to be pretty good. So what we're doing here is sending out safety bulletins and information they can include in their newsletters to share with their membership. So fairly pleased with the way that's going. And ultimately we're doing safety presentations with the agricultural colleges. This is trying to get in nice and early, talk to the young farmers, the guys in the 18, 19, 20 that start an agricultural college, making them aware of pipelines. So that's another interesting topic we're looking at. Right, our Linewatch members, yep, free service. Wow, nice to have something free. So we're always available to give you information about our pipelines. Come out to site, we locate the pipelines, we'll mark the route of the line, we'll have some good discussions early on to try and get this into a place whereby we can work safely around those lines. When you come to do the work, we'll again provide a free service where we'll come and supervise the work around the pipeline itself to ensure we've got the protection of our assets, which is very important to us. So please take us up on the offer of this because it is free. And we're more than willing to help us wherever we can. Okay, why do we do it? Yes, well, as you can see on the photograph, it's protection of our buried assets, prevent damage to our pipelines, protect the environment, and prevent injury to personnel on site and the general public. The example you're looking at there is actually one of my pipelines that was damaged it's an ethylene line. So this damage was inflicted by a drainage contractor using a trenching machine. So you can see the score marks on the side of the pipe, really quite scary. There was metal loss in this case is down to about 40% on a standard wall pipe, which was only at 7 mil. So this was, we had to really shut the pipeline down. We had to de-inventory the pipeline. We had to cut the pipeline out and put a new spool in. As you can imagine, this was a substantial cost to our business. So that's our main driver. You know, ultimately, if somebody had hit this and it had burst, there would have been deaths on the scene. This is what we really need to avoid at all costs. Okay, thank you. Just to my final slide, really. This is just to check us out at the Linewatch website, or you can email your inquiries to linewatch@fishergerman.co. So I will just leave it there, really, I think. Just thank you all for your attention, and I hope you found the presentation informative and interesting. I'm not sure if we've got questions at this time or whether we're going to pick them up at the end, Bob, but
we'll pick them up at the end, Geoff, if that's okay.
Okay, right. Thank you very much for your time.
Good afternoon. My name's Phil Taylor. Can you all hear me okay? Good. So I'm the, just bear with with me while I get the technology to work. There we go. So yes, thank you, Geoff, for your presentation. My presentation is going to be talking about UKOPA. So whether United Kingdom or Onshore Pipeline Association, and my roles as BPA Lands Manager and the Infringement Working Group Chairman, and the benefits of this group and of collaborative working. So following on from this morning's presentations and from Geoff. So the illustration, the photograph in front of you there is something we come across a lot. You see our marker post there, but in this instance, on our pipeline here, there's been a disregard for the marker post, and excavation has occurred on top of the pipeline. Fortunately, in this case, there was no damage to the pipeline, but as you can see, there's a machine there, and damage could have occurred. So I look after I work for the British Pipeline Agency, which is a managing agent. We look after liquid multi-product pipelines up and down the country, connecting into Stanlow, Kingsbury, Birmingham, Bunsfield, Heathrow Airport and Gatwick Airport. Also, I'm the chairman of the Infringement Working Group, and so my job of looking after cross-country pipelines fits closely in with those two aspects. Similar to Geoff's slide, really, in terms of the underground assets, there's thousands of kilometres of underground assets under the country, and you know, I think we're all in the business here of making sure that the operations continue, and as from a safety perspective, that they operate as safely as possible. So UKOPA, it was set up in 1996, and is responsible, looks after the 27,000 kilometres of underground assets. Currently there's 31 members, and it covers the oil, gas and petrochemical industries. The role of UKOPA is to provide a view on strategic issues relating to safety management, operations and integrity management. It also provides a forum for discussion, knowledge sharing and promoting of best practice. UKOPA is hopefully known as a recognised expert and an industry voice to influence development of legislation and standards. The UKOPA is currently split into a number of working groups covering those listed there: process safety, fault and risk, emergency planning, pipeline integrity, and as I mentioned, infringements. And they come together regularly to discuss current issues and share information. In terms of the Infringement Working Group, well, as the title indicates, we're looking at infringements. We currently meet quarterly, and there's 18 companies involved, very well intended, and we produce and look after the infringement database, where the encouragement is that all operators submit into the database, which we produce an annual infringement report. The idea is that we then promote an awareness of some of the infringements and learn from these instances. The difference with some of the other working groups is that we have a HSE representative sitting on the Infringement Working Group, which is very welcome and very useful, in the sense that it provides a link into other sectors that HSE look after, and they obviously keep a watching eye on what we're producing and what our work programme is. We look at sharing best practice, and there's an encouragement for members to produce these safety alerts on the screen. So the idea is that we produce a couple of pages per safety alert, and then these are shared on our website, and we can learn from these instances, and that the idea is that they don't happen again. Similar to Geoff's slide there, we've got, I suppose, the big oil and gas operators that are members of the Infringement Working Group. As I mentioned, so we collate these infringements. We look at, we then do an investigation into them, and with a view of trying to prevent them in the future. As my next slides will illustrate, we look at the types of infringers, the people that are carrying out the works, activities, the type of activities that are causing these infringements, and then also the locations of such. In 2019, we had about approximately 800 or 900 infringements reported into the infringement database. And the idea between the categorization is that we rank them from A to C. And as you can see there, A being the worst of damage, B serious potential, and C limited potential, with the difference between the two of 1 within the easement and 2 outside of the easement. And the idea has always been that we encourage operators to submit infringements on the C category and across the board, but the idea is that we're likely to have more of the limited potential for damage, but that's where our learning comes from. And the objective, of course, is to eradicate the A's and B's. In 2019, we saw a spike of fencing contractors, and I know Sam will touch on this in the next presentation. So we're seeing when it was used to be the hand digging of small fence posts being constructed, we're seeing large machinery now across big fields and big fencing posts being pneumatically pushed in and hammered into the ground. And of course that at 0.9 or thereabouts of these high pressure pipelines, there's a serious risk of those being damaged. We also, for example, in 2019 saw an increase in damage or infringements being caused from the forestry industry, and so that currently was sitting in the other categories. You can see there's quite a number, but what we try and do is then extract out from that new categories, and then that informs our work program for the following year. Because the nature of these high pressure pipelines, when they were laid, traverses rural land, by virtue, farmland is where we're seeing the majority of our infringements. And we continue to work with the farming and rural communities to understand that they have a duty to contact pipeline operators, and also a duty. It's free, as Geoff mentioned, for us to come out. Most operators offer a free service to supervise works, but it's still that old adage of that it's my land, I'm going to do what I like. So we have a good relationship with our farmers across our network, but as land gets split and changes hands, there's a duty there to keep up to date with who's actually working the land. And just finally, from an example of an infringement that happened a couple of years ago across our network, this pipeline traverses a garden, and they were having an extension constructed, and the builder decided they needed a soakaway. I don't think I'd like my soakaway constructed. We're using those materials. Obviously, we required that to be removed, and fortunately, the pipeline wasn't damaged. So the landowner in this instance hadn't completed a line search, claimed they weren't aware of the pipeline, and so there's an exercise there of communicating with our landowners, which we do on an annual basis. Some operators have landowner liaison officers who go and regularly talk to landowners, which is sometimes more difficult for the larger operators. But as per the pipeline safety regs, we have a duty to keep the pipeline safe, and make landowners and tenants aware of our existence. So I think there's a synergy there between the Linewatch and the UKOPA infringement working group, that we're both trying to reduce infringements. Fortunately, the Linewatch group has got a resource to go out and talk to people, whereas we're more of the industry voice, and we produce a lot of good practice guides to help some of the smaller operators to learn from some of our instances and things that haven't gone as well as we'd expect. So we continue to try and push for a reduction in the number of infringements, and with collaborative working, we continue to do so. That was it from me. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sam Parton, and I'm an Associate Director at Fisher German and work in their National Utilities and Infrastructure Department. And today I'll just be providing a brief overview today of how we at Fisher German support our clients with their infringements and how we follow them up to ensure they are fully understood and how we can try to prevent them in the future. Okay, so just a quick introduction. Who are Fisher German? Give you a little overview of who our clients are, what we do for them, what infringements are themselves, how we follow them up, preventing, avoiding infringements, and then I'll run through 3 little case studies, so case study 1, 2 and 3, and then any questions at the end. Okay, so who are Fisher German? Fisher German are a national service provider. We're established back in 2000 with a history going back to 1830, with considerable resources to operate a localised approach to service delivery. We've now got top 15 UK property consultancy in 2018. With 26 offices dotted around the UK, most recently our newest office down in Exeter. We've now got 600 staff, including 60 partners, over 10,000 active clients, and average client relationship is around about 25 years. So very long-standing clients. Just to give you a flavour of some of the clients we work for, we've got clients such as National Grid, Cadence, CLH, as long as all the way over to the likes of Lloyds Bank on our valuation side of the business. Okay, so what do? We provide advice across 6 sectors. That's commercial, development, residential, rural, sustainable energy, and utilities and infrastructure. More specific to today, I'll be talking more around the utilities and infrastructure side, and we do pipeline management and maintenance. So approximately 5,000 kilometres of pipeline is managed by Fisher German, operating up to about 100 bar, the equivalent of pumping 10 tonnes of fuel a minute, which would fill a road tanker every 3 minutes. We complete over 1,000 supervisions, works oversights with third parties on behalf of our clients every year. We undertake street patrols through highly populated areas, 6 days a week, 52 weeks a year. And we do regularly check valve compounds, take CP readings, line walks, etc. And we also do a lot of infrastructure consultancy, so provide advice on all elements of infrastructure, whether it be for water, electricity, gas, telecommunications, highways, rail, etc. Okay, so moving on to the subjects of infringements. What are they? Well, they're technically when works take place in an area that may affect a utility operator's asset. They're also known as near misses or encroachments, you might hear them known as. They're typically undertaken without prior notification, so without a valid LS-FUD search being done with the operator or their agent. The highest priority infringements usually recorded within the legal easement or way-leave area. These can vary depending on the type of asset and what legal arrangements in place for it. The assets I predominantly work on operate a 6 metre protection zone, but this can vary quite a lot. As Geoff mentioned earlier, about 50 metres, up to 50 metres away from the pipelines. And this area can also be extended to capture works further away. So the person doing the work can be reminded of the presence of the apparatus for any future works that they might do. As Phil said before, the most common infringements we see are agricultural works such as fencing and ditching, road works, domestic residential development, commercial development. I know Richard at the beginning of the day said not to mention the C word, but interestingly we've seen a bit of a trend with COVID recently. Clients have seen an increase in domestic and residential infringements as people are spending a lot more time at home, developing their gardens, extending their houses, etc. And some believe they can crack on with the work without giving any notice, especially in the lockdown that we're now entering again. Okay, so how do we follow up infringements? Once identified, Fisher German are usually required to follow up infringements within a certain time frame. This is typically 30 days, in line with key performance indicators that we get from our clients. However, this can vary depending on the client requirements. And we at Fisher German have developed some software that we can track infringements and see them all the way from the start to the end. Okay, so the follow-up includes, so we'll have to collate all the information from site, get an accurate location and proximity of the infringement from the client's asset. If the integrity of the client's asset has been compromised or could have been compromised, Fisher German will ensure that access is available for contractors to go in there and sort that out. We'll have to identify the infringer and make contact with them to discuss. We'll try and work out if they're a previous infringer and have done infringements in the past, because that can alter the way we follow things up slightly. We'll need to understand why prior notification wasn't given, so why was a LS-Bud search not completed, etc. Provide advice to the infringer, so contact details for Fisher German, use LS-Bud, definitely get a Linewatch presentation if they're a contractor, or even a landowner could get one if they needed. Murray goes out a lot, as Geoff said, and there's a lot of presentations. And then follow up in writing. So we've got on record, so if there's any future infringements by that person, we've got it on record and we can bring that out in the future. Okay, so how do we prevent avoid infringements? So once we've done the follow-up, we do a full root cause analysis to try and provide a summary of the incident and any lessons learned for the future. I think that's really, really useful to do, and it's always on record to show all the details behind that infringement. Advise the infringer to make contact with Fisher German prior to any works near the pipeline and to complete a free LS-Bud search. Ensure adequate marking on site for future reference. Make sure the infringer is included in future safety letters or re-referencing. As I said before, if contractors are at fault, make sure they do a Linewatch presentation. And complete regular re-referencing and deploy a landowner liaison officer. We've seen a real good feedback from landowners on that, especially rural landowners and the farmers where all these infringements are happening. They quite like to see a landowner liaison officer, and they can see that the pipeline operators are taking it seriously. Okay, so just 3 case studies now. So the first one, some rural estate fencing on an estate. The old fencing was removed and this new fencing was installed. You can see the quite large fence posts in there. They're about 6 foot tall, and as Phil said, that they're now mechanically driven into the ground, which obviously poses a higher risk to the pipeline. The contractor did think the pipeline ran at 90 degrees to the old fencing, so he put the posts both sides of the marker post. However, it did run at an angle to the fencing, so that was quite a close one. And that was approximately 500 millimeters away from the pipeline. Yeah, so that's that example. The second one was one I dealt with earlier this year. The landowner managed to get his hands on a telegraph pole. We initially envisaged it was a BT or electricity pole, but after an LS-Bud search, it showed there was no BT or electricity apparatus in that area. The infringer turned out to be the landowner, developing the site very quickly. We were on site within about an hour, thankfully, with a contractor and a representative from the client. We managed to get that removed safely, but that was only 280 millimeters away from the pipeline, which was a little bit scary. And the third one, unfortunately, this is what we're trying to avoid. It was a white fence post around a sports pitch, and on the bottom of the post there was a 3 foot metal spike. I'm not sure if you can see that in the photo, but I've circled it in red. It was a corner post to act as an anchor, and they'd inserted that post, and unfortunately it had hit the pipeline. You see the dent in blue, and ultimately that's what we're trying to avoid. That's the last case study. And is there any questions? I think we're going to move to. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Bill, Sam and Geoff. Really useful presentations, and we have a number of questions which we've got time for, I'm glad to say. First one, if I can fire it off. What kinds of activities are the public undertaking when they infringe, and how can we better communicate the risk of these activities to the public?
The types of activities range from installing a water pipe to constructing an extension from a residential perspective. And so each operator writes and communicates with the landowners and tenants, but I would, urge operators to have a proper communications plan with the stakeholders.
Right. Okay. Anybody else want to comment on that? No? Okay. A broad question. Do you think access to asset data should be restricted to just statutory undertakers and local authorities and their contractors, or open to anybody putting a spade in the ground?
Most definitely open to everybody. We actually encourage our landowners to try and use the Ellis Wood facility. They ultimately don't, because they tend to want to talk to us directly, usually by phone call. A lot of landowners prefer that method, but yeah, I think we would encourage it.
Yeah. So any move to make it more focused nationally on statutory undertakers and local authorities, you think would be a step backwards?
It's just got to be open to everybody. I see. You've got to, it's just, why narrow the band down? You can't do that, really, can you? I don't think you can.
Okay. Anybody else want to comment on that?
I think, Bob, there's always going to be commercial sensitivities with some of the asset data. I've noticed that with clients before. They're quite nervous about handing data out sometimes to everyone, especially when we had the spate of hot tapping a few years ago, when there was some illegal fuel hot taps onto the pipelines. So people were putting hot taps on the pipes and stealing fuel out of the lines. So yeah, I mean, those asset owners are online search, and you can find out where the assets are, and they are marked out on the ground, so it's not difficult to find them.
Okay, we have another one here. Have you seen a change in interactions with contractors, landowners and occupiers and local authorities during the past 6 months? I think probably that's relating to the C word. Yeah,
like I mentioned, the clients I've worked for, they've seen a bit of a trend in people doing more work in residential, domestic environments, and there's been quite a lot of infringements that have happened as a result of that, where they've not let people know, whether they're not aware of line search or ringing the pipeline operator, I'm not sure. But, we certainly come across people on a day-to-day basis who have bought houses and bought property, and they have no idea that there's a high pressure fuel line or a pipeline in the ground through the property. And unfortunately we have to send them back to the conveyancer a lot of the time, because it's been missed on the searches. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the truisms, isn't it? If you can't see it, you don't know it's there. But underground assets are a challenge. Geoff, someone's asked particularly, you mentioned you've been in the business for 47 years. Someone's asked particularly, what's your experience of how things have changed over your career in terms of threats to buried assets?
Good question. Well, in the last 25 years in pipelines, I have seen a noticeable improvement in the way we work around pipelines. So I can remember when I first came into pipelines, we had tens of infringements every year on our pipelines, and we've got those down to single figures now on an annual basis. So we've seen some big changes, a lot of changes. Before Linewatch was around, before Line Search, before your dig was around, it was very difficult. You were just struggling to make your own contacts within local authorities, and make sure you had all your right contacts in place with your own landowners. But yeah, market improvement over the last 20 years, definitely.
So people are more open to it and with a better understanding of the risk, you think?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think we've perhaps as operators, we're getting a little bit more. We're out there a lot more talking to people. UKOPA's doing a little bit more. UKOPA was only set up in '96, so since that sort of time, there's some definite marked improvements on the communication side from it. I think so.
Okay. Okay. We haven't, I don't think we've got any more questions at the moment. Is there anything any of you, we've got probably 2 or 3 minutes left. Is there anything you'd like to add, any of you, whilst we utilise the time to the best use?
Well, I just personally welcome people to, if there's operators out there that aren't part of Linewatch, or if they're not using LS Bud, to sign up to it, come and join us. You know, you'll find some good benefits of being part of that group.
Okay.
Yes, and similarly, I say the same for UKOPA. I think there's been an increase in the benefits and learning that comes from sharing of instances, and that is intangible. And so, by being part of these groups, you can learn and do things better.
Okay. Just seeing, I think we've got one more question come through. What interaction does the HSE have with infringers? Are there any examples the panel can describe where the HSE have interviewed or prosecuted infringers?
Yeah, it's we've had an infringement with some damage to our pipeline, probably about 20 years ago was one of the worst ones we had, where they damaged the pipeline. HSE got involved. They came out and interviewed both the operator. They came and looked at all of our records. They got involved and talked with the landowner. They didn't ultimately prosecute, but they were keen to engage at the time.
Okay, yeah. So a good relationship, working relationship with SSE.
Yeah, I think so, Bob. Particularly through the UKOPA now, we've got some good inroads there, working with the HSE, and they get involved in all of our meetings as well. So we have seen some improvements. The HSE got involved about 10 years ago, and they went out to some of the companies that were having the largest numbers of infringements, and they went in at the senior level and they talked to the management and said they need to smarten their act up a little bit and work better. And we've seen some really big improvements in that area, to be honest.
And do we think there's adequate engagement with other assets owners, particularly the new fibre installers?
I think we're okay. I mean, I'm aware of fibre crossings that cross our pipeline, so they always contact us when they're doing some work. So we don't recall any issues or infringements with fibres on my network anyway.
Okay. I mean, obviously, it's a huge growth area, fibre installation at the moment.
Yeah.
Some very major contracts being let. Yeah.
So far, so
okay.
good.
Okay. I think that about wraps it up. Can I thank you, gentlemen, very much for your contribution and your presentations. Very useful indeed. I'd like to just remind people that there is the breakout sessions now, and please make use of those as much as you possibly can. And when we come back after this session, we'll come back again after the breakout sessions at, where are we? 15 minutes past 3, and that will be the final session, but a really good session with Scott Landers, who is the CEO of the I've got my notes here somewhere. Rhino Marketing and Protection Systems and Infrastructure Resources. Well worth listening to later. So I hope everyone can join that, and look forward to seeing you then. Thank you very much.